What's up, everyone? This is Lucas Ross Sports, and you're watching my Lucas Ross Sports channel, and it's time for week number 9 of Upset Alert for the 2022 college football season. And basically how this video works, I give you 8 games each. I give you 4 games each that are most likely to be an upset, and then 4 most not likely to be an upset. Looking back to last weekend, it was a pretty quiet weekend of the season. Probably the most quietest weekend of the 2022 season so far. I think this weekend, though, is going to be pretty wide open. We got some big games on the schedule. I mean, you look at back to last weekend, the only big upset, I think, was the LSU versus Ole Miss game. That was in my Upset Alert video. Then you had Oregon versus UCLA, which wasn't really a big upset, to be honest. And then you had Oklahoma State beating Texas at home, which Texas was favored in that game. You know, it was really weird seeing Texas favored in that game. And now this weekend, I think it's going to be wide open. So let's get started here with our week number 9 of Upset Alert. We'll start with the games that are most not likely to be an upset. And we'll start with this one. In the Big Ten, it's going to be Ohio State versus Penn State. This game's at noon Eastern time on Fox. Ohio State favored by 15.5 points. The over and under is at 61. Ohio State coming off a big win against Iowa last weekend, which Iowa has been pretty terrible this year, and I know their offense is kind of not good as well. Ohio State, though, I think the offense is good enough to go into the game here against Penn State and perhaps pull off a win. Penn State, though, they've had some decent wins this year. Against Purdue, they beat Minnesota last weekend by a blowout. So, I mean, that was a game that Penn State was a big favorite in as well. And I think this game right here, I think Penn State has a chance to pull off an upset. I think they really do. But, this game right here, Ohio State is really too talented on both sides of the ball. And I think it's just going to be way too much for Penn State. And honestly, if you look at both of these teams are battling for a Big Ten championship spot. But if Penn State loses this game this Saturday, they are going to be out of that contention for the Big Ten championship because they've already lost to Michigan this season, so that's why they are sitting there at 6-1. And basically this season is flying by. It's hard to really keep up with all these games, but Ohio State is playing Penn State this Saturday. It gets on Fox. It's a noon game, so it should be a really good one between these two teams. Let's go to the next game now, and we go to the Pac-12. Oregon goes on the road to face Cal. This game's at 3:30 on FS1. Oregon favored by 17 points in this game. The over and under is at 58. Now, I know this is not typically, a game that you want to put on your list, but I think Cal, is a team that you kind of want to look out for. This is kind of like a similar, to a trap game or something, because Oregon does play Utah coming up, soon I think it's the next weekend. And, maybe they're looking ahead to that game. Maybe they have Utah on their minds, and this is probably where they could slip up. But I think this is clearly a favorite, for Oregon heading into this game because, Oregon's coming off some big wins in the last few games. Remember that first game against Georgia? They did not play really well. I think the staff was really new to them, and they couldn't really get used to it. And now look where Oregon's at. Oregon is now got a chance to make the playoff, maybe also make the Pac-12 championship. And Oregon is sitting there at 6-1. Like I said, they've gotten better each and every single game ever since the BYU game and also, losing to Georgia. So I like what Oregon is doing, in the last few weeks. And they got a chance to really, win this game, maybe big against Cal, but you never know. An upset could happen here, but we just never know what can happen. Maybe it's a blowout. Maybe it's a close game. You never know. But we've seen Oregon, time and time over the years back then where Oregon went on the road to face Cal and they would lose that game, by a, 6-point margin. So stay tuned for that game. It should be a pretty good one here. This game's at 3:30 on Fox Sports 1. Let's go to the third game now that I think is most not likely to be an upset. And it's Kentucky and Tennessee. Kentucky and Tennessee in the SEC East. Kentucky ranked number 19, Tennessee ranked in the top 5. This game's a 7 o'clock game, so it's a night game on ESPN. Tennessee is rocking out in black jerseys this weekend. That is going to be pretty big. It's like a Halloween tradition, I think. This game's Saturday, though. Tennessee's favored by 12.5 points in this game, which is surprising to me. I think this is some kind of trap game for Tennessee. I mean, you look at the rivalry between Tennessee and Kentucky over the years, it's not been that big, but Tennessee has dominated this series, and this is one of my favorite rivalries in the SEC East. Tennessee and Kentucky, I mean, both teams are pretty explosive on offense. I mean, Kentucky, though, can they run the football against this Tennessee defensive line, which ranks the top 10 in the rushing game? They've been stopping the running game pretty well this year, but Tennessee had a lot of players out this past weekend. Could they have those players healthy this weekend? If they don't, Kentucky might run all over this Tennessee defense, and this might be the most yardage that Tennessee has given up on the defensive side of the ball with the rushing game. I mean, Kentucky's got really talented, running backs, and they also got Will Levis that can run the football. Yes, this is some kind of trap game for Tennessee. Really don't sleep on this game, though. Tennessee, though, should really take care of business. I mean, they got Georgia next weekend, so they're probably prepared for that game, but maybe, the UT Martin game, they really took care of business, and they might take care of business in this game, but I'm telling you, this is some sort of trap game for Tennessee. And the game is at 7 o'clock this Saturday on ESPN. Really going to be a good one here between Tennessee and Kentucky. All right, the fourth game and the last one that is most not likely to be an upset, Georgia versus Florida here in Jacksonville. This game's on CBS at 3:30. I knew this game would be on CBS because it's usually always on CBS between Georgia and Florida. Looking at these two teams, are coming out of a bye week this week. A lot of improvement, coming into this weekend. For Florida, they lost a couple weeks ago to LSU. For Georgia, they won pretty easily in their last game. Georgia's not really played anybody that really tough this year. I mean, yes, those Kent State and Missouri games are pretty close, but they haven't really played a decent team. Maybe one of the best teams in the country, but I mean, Tennessee could probably be a challenge, next weekend, but they're really looking forward to this game right here. I mean, I think Florida was just probably on, Georgia's mind, because they played LSU last weekend. That's a game they could have won. That's a game they could have won, and they probably could have been sitting here at 5-2 heading into this game against Georgia. But Georgia is one of the most dangerous teams in the country, and also they're one of the top teams in the country. Georgia is a 22.5 favorite in this game against Florida this Saturday, which is really reasonable because Florida hasn't been all that great this year under Billy Napier's first year, and Georgia just has been really good. Georgia, ever since that first game, has proven that they are one of the most dangerous teams in the country. But if I was going to make a prediction on this game, Georgia would win easily by a couple touchdowns. Let's be honest, Florida has not been really that good this year, and I haven't been really pretty high on the Gators. I still think they can make a bowl game, but the schedule will get tougher for Florida at the end of the year. All right, let's go to the games now that are most likely to be an upset. And we start with this one. It's in the Pac-12, Utah versus Washington State. This game's at 10 o'clock tomorrow on Fox Sports 1. It's a home game for Washington State. Utah, though, favored by about a touchdown. The over and under is at 55. Utah coming out of a bye week this past weekend. And, they won that game over against USC at home. And Utah has a lot of confidence going into this game, but they do play Oregon the next weekend. Maybe they are a little bit too confident against this Washington State team. They'll probably just say, yeah, we're going to roll over this team. But no, this is not going to be an easy game for Utah. Washington State has upsetted, a Division I team. That was against Wisconsin, which Wisconsin ended up not being really good this year. And Washington State can do it. I think Washington State can pull off an upset here, because Utah is only favored by 7 points in this game. But it will be tough for Washington State. Utah's got a great offense. They also have a great defense. But if I was going to make a prediction on this game, I would say that Utah survives, a close one here against Washington State. I think this is kind of similar to the UCLA game, but Utah just comes out, winning this time. So that is my first game on the upset alert list. Let's go to the second game. And we now in the Big 12. We have TCU and West Virginia. This game is a road game for TCU, and this game's at noon Eastern time on ESPN. TCU favored by 7.5 points. The over and under is at 69. TCU coming off some really couple big strong wins in the Big 12. Of course, Oklahoma State was first, and then Kansas State last weekend. So, TCU is undefeated. They could slip up, though. This is the game that they could really slip up. It's probably similar to the Tennessee and Kentucky game. It's some sort of trap game for TCU. I know West Virginia hasn't been all that good this year, but this is, an okay West Virginia team. I'm not saying they're a decent team or a quality team like that. I think they're just an okay team. But West Virginia can pull off an upset. We've seen, West Virginia pull off, some upsets in the past, and, it's always a tough place to play in Morgantown, West Virginia. So this game's on ESPN at noon Eastern time. It's going to be a good one here in the Big 12. And TCU is at the top of the Big 12, but if they don't win this game, it's going to be a three-way tie for first, for the Big 12 championship. Let's go to the third game now on Upset Alert, and we stay in the Big 12, and I just talked about them. Oklahoma State at Kansas State. This game's a 3:30 game on Fox in Manhattan. Kansas State's favored by 1.5 points. This game is over and under is at 56, so this is pretty much a 50-50 game. Both teams are, they have one loss in the Big 12. Kansas State lost to TCU last weekend, and then Oklahoma State lost to TCU a couple weeks ago. But Oklahoma State just beat Texas this past weekend. I think this is a good Oklahoma State team. I think they are a playoff contender as well. And they could possibly meet TCU in the Big 12 championship for a rematch. And if I was going to make a prediction in that game, Oklahoma State would win, in the Big 12 championship. They would get revenge on TCU. But this game right here, they got to get past Kansas State, which is really tough to play in Manhattan. If I was going to make a prediction, though, on this game, I would say that Kansas State would pull off an upset. I think I'm going to go with the upset here. I have the Wildcats defeating Oklahoma State here at home. But this game's a 3:30 game on Fox. It's going to be a pretty good one here in the Big 12. That is my third game here on the Upset Alert list. All right, let's go to our last game now here on Upset Alert for week number 9. And it's in the ACC. It's number 10th ranked Wake Forest on the road at Louisville. This game's at 3:30 this Saturday on the ACC network, which is surprising me that it's not an ESPN game. And Wake Forest is favored by 4 points, and the over and under is at 62. Wake Forest comes in at 6-1, coming off a big win against Boston College. Louisville comes in at 4-3. They defeated Pittsburgh last weekend, which they did, play pretty good defense in that game. Ever since that first game for Louisville, they've been a lot better of a team. They could be a decent team by the end of the year. This team is starting to turn things around a little bit. Wake Forest also starting to turn things around. Not really turn things around, but their schedule is starting to get tougher a little bit. Yes, that one loss has been to Clemson, which they could have won that game. I would say that Wake Forest is still a contender in the Atlantic Division, but currently Clemson is at the top of the division because Wake Forest has already been beat by Clemson. But I think Louisville has a really big chance here to pull off an upset against a top 10 team in Wake Forest. I think this will be a really close game. Louisville has beaten some really good teams this year. They've already beaten, Pittsburgh last weekend. And, they've, beaten UCF. So, this team is on a roll. This team is on a roll right now. I think they can make it to a bowl game perhaps by the end of the year. But we'll see how this game goes this weekend. Again, it's a 3:30 game on the ACC network. And those are my Upset Alert games for week number 9 of the 2022 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about these 8 games and what games, you'll like to see here on Upset Alert. Make your Upset Alert picks here on the video. And again, subscribe to this channel if you are new. We're trying to get the views up, and also we're trying to get the subscribers up and grow this channel. This is a channel that is based on, sports around the country. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.